This podcast is music history, education, and commentary. Some coarse language is used and adult topics are sometimes discussed. It may not be appropriate for young children. Welcome to Rock and Roll Archaeology from Pantheon Media with your host, Christian Swain. Digging into music, culture, and technology. Past, present, and future. And now, on with the show.
Hey, all you diggers out there. Welcome to this special encore presentation from the Rock and Roll Archaeology Project's ongoing series, Deeper Digs in Rock. Or revived series, Deeper Digs in Rock, actually. I'm Christian Swain, and I'm behind the mic here in San Francisco. This is the place where we take an in-depth look at a wide range of topics, all of which are connected to rock music in their own unique way. Mostly interviews, where we talk to musicians, authors, today a lawyer. As we approach the 45th anniversary of John Lennon's tragic passing this December, we are reaching into our archives to bring you a truly remarkable conversation. In December of 2018, I had the profound honor of interviewing Leon Wildes, the brilliant immigration attorney who represented John Lennon and Yoko Ono in their historic battle against the U.S. government's attempt to deport them. It is with heavy heart that we note Leon Wildes passed away last year, so making this interview a poignant and valuable piece of history. This episode delves into the politically charged atmosphere of the early 1970s, where the Nixon administration, wary of Lennon's anti-war stance and his influence over a new generation of young voters empowered by the 26th Amendment, sought to silence him. What started as a seemingly routine immigration case quickly escalated into a 5-year legal saga that tested the very foundations of American justice. Sound familiar? Join us as we revisit this incredible conversation with Leon Wildes, along with his son and attorney Michael Wildes, who provides a first-hand account of the strategies, the pressures, and the ultimate triumphs of the case detailed in his book, John Lennon versus the U.S.A. All right, diggers, I give you Leon Wildes.
Karma's gonna get you, gonna knock you right on the head. You better get yourself together, pretty soon you're gonna be dead. What in the world you thinking of? Laughing in the face of love. What on earth you trying to do? It's up to you.
Today, we have Leon and Michael Wildes of Wildes and Weinberg Partners. Mr. Wildes, welcome to the Rock and Roll Archaeology Project's Deeper Digs in Rock. I hope you're doing well, and we look forward to discussing your career as one of America's preeminent immigration attorneys. For our listeners, so they don't get confused, there was a certain client that took up most of your time between 1972 and 1976 that will be of great interest, and we'll get to that shortly. And I must say, your story couldn't be more perfectly timed given the current political climate surrounding immigration law. So first, tell us, how did you get into immigration law? Was it a passion or something that presented itself that you just kind of followed?
Well, after achieving my law degree and a master's after that, I saw a notice on the bulletin board at the law school at NYU where I was attending that there was a job offer available for someone who understood or could speak Hebrew and Yiddish.
Oh.
That was with an organization called HIAS, H-I-A-S, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, which was a refugee organization one of the first and most important refugee organizations.
When was this? This was in the late 50s, early 60s, is that right?
1959.
Yeah, so a lot of immigrants from Europe escaping the post-war.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I developed an interest specifically in immigration law. It was a budding field. There weren't a lot of successful lawyers in it. Not the big firms never bothered with it and so on.
Oh.
There wasn't even a case book on the field at the time, because after finishing my work with Hayas, I opened my own office and eventually...
And that was in New York City, correct?
Yes.
And what year was that?
That was 1960.
Okay.
And in 1980, I started to teach as an adjunct professor of law at Cardozo Law School in New York.
Yeah, I believe you've written several really important papers on immigration law that we'll get into.
Yeah, actually, this is the first book that I've ever published, but I've done a lot of writing in the field.
So, a fateful evening, I believe in 1971, concerns most of our discussion today. So tell our listeners how you got involved in the immigration case of John and Yoko Ono Lennon.
An attorney who I knew had become counsel to Apple Records, and he called me, and we had worked on some cases together before he took the job with Apple. And he said, "Leon, there is a very important potential client here that I'd like you to meet. In fact, he doesn't come to lawyers' offices.
Right.
I'd be happy to take you to see him together with my boss, Alan Klein, who was the manager of the Beatles."
Yeah, and then John afterwards, yes.
And he said, that Alan Klein will be there because he's not going to allow somebody to be hired until he was satisfied that this was the right lawyer for his primary client.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were taken to John and Yoko's apartment in Greenwich Village, and it was an extraordinary experience.
I can imagine. I believe you were unfamiliar with them and their work.
Yeah, I asked my friend, "Listen, who are these people?" He said, "John Lennon and Yoko Ono." I said, "Who are they?" I wasn't very much into rock music, and I must have been asleep for years. It was probably, he said, "Don't ever repeat that you didn't know who they were."
Oh, yeah. So, 40 years later, I think it's okay to let that out. But certainly, yeah, I believe you came home and told your wife, Ruth, that you had met, was it Jack Lemmon and Yoko Moto?
Yeah, that was the best that I could recall the names. And she said to me, "Are you talking about John Lennon and Yoko Ono?"
Right.
I said, "Yeah, that's right. That's more correct."
Yeah. I guess that's a life-changing experience, wouldn't you say?
In all these years.
Yeah. So when did you realize you were dealing with an extraordinary case beyond just representing celebrities? In other words, when things didn't normally add up in a simple deportation case?
When I asked for a simple extension of stay, they were here as visitors, and Yoko had a child that she was trying to find and get custody of from a
Kyoko Ono Cox, correct?
And I thought it was just a simple extension application. In fact, I told the lawyer who was with me that he didn't really need me for that because it's such a significant and important question that she needs the time here for, that I felt it would be an easy case.
Okay.
But then the district director of immigration in New York.
Yeah, Saul Marks, right?
Yes, he called me and he said, "Leon, because it's you, I'm going to give you a month." But they wouldn't have gotten anything, and they will never get another extension, and tell them to get the hell out.
Wow. And that was the first inkling that you had, that you were dealing with something a little bit different than your previous immigration cases.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. And let's get back to it.
Now, I think most of our listeners are familiar with the genius of John Lennon. And while she's a world-renowned and unique artist of several disciplines, I was really struck by how significant Yoko's intelligence, grasp, and intuition played throughout this 5-year struggle. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, she seemed to understand even better than John in the beginning that it might not be an open and shut extension case and that they might deny it. She was aware of the fact that John had expressed himself as she had on many occasions against our war in Vietnam and other important current issues, and she felt that the government would not be happy with those expressions. However, we had no way of knowing that it would happen that quickly.
So, and I think this kind of like the smoking gun for that, for the government, was a concert that was put on in Michigan, in Detroit, for John Sinclair. Is that correct?
Yes, that happened a month before I was retained, and I didn't know anything about it. When I found out that had taken place, it all started to fit together.
Okay. All right. And I think the night that you met them, there were two significant events. The first was John's explanation of what he thought the reasoning was for the deportation, which was his 1968 conviction of cannabis resin, hash. And he had to explain that to you. So that was the first piece. And then the second was actually you came up with a strategy that maybe others hadn't considered.
Well, I asked him. He said we're going to need as much extension time as necessary to find Kyoko and work something out with her father so that we could share her. And not take her less or more than the time amount that the court would determine was appropriate for each parent. And we soon knew then that we weren't going to get that kind of time, and that hardship that Yoko and John would sustain didn't mean a damn thing to the government. They wanted them out, come hell or high water.
Wow, just no quarter at all, huh?
Yeah.
So you, I think, looked at the hashish conviction, and you discovered that you could maybe split hairs legally because a law in the INS statutes had been changed with regards to narcotics and marijuana. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, the statute at that time, I brought along a copy of it to show to John and Yoko.
That night.
It said that anybody who had a conviction for possessing narcotics or marijuana. And
that was a recent addition, right?
It was a recent change in the law. And so as a result, we focused on my first suggestion. And that was, I asked him, is hash marijuana? And he said, oh, no, it's much better than marijuana. And I inquired among experts in the field, and I found that I might be able to find the top physician in the country who knew all about that issue and get him to testify that cannabis resin was not marijuana, and therefore John did not have a ground of deportation, that it was invoked improperly.
Yeah, and I think another famous attorney is who kind of gave you that researcher, right?
I'm sorry.
Alan Dershowitz?
Yeah, I had discussed that issue with several experts, and Alan was one of the ones who told me that he thought that issue, and on another issue that came up later in the proceedings, that he felt otherwise, and that if I researched it, I would find that I might win on that ground.
And that was Dr. Lester Grinspoon who you contacted, right?
Dr. Grinspoon of Harvard Medical School.
But he was reluctant to testify.
Well, he told me at the time that he doesn't testify anymore, and that if I'd like his book, he'd be happy to send it to me. But books don't go over well in court
right.
on serious issues. And he eventually called me back and said, "Can I change my mind?" He told me about an unfortunate circumstance. One of his children had a very, very serious disease and was not likely to survive. And he found out at dinner with that child that the child was in awe of John Lennon. And the moment he heard of how important it might be to his son, he called me and said, "I think I'd like to change my mind. If you can get me a lot of stuff endorsed by and autographed by John, I'll be happy to come and testify." So that was the first challenge that we met with the government, but they turned it down nevertheless.
Yeah, it doesn't seem in the book. It doesn't seem that was kind of a large player in the overall play. But there was a second avenue that you pursued, which I think that John and Yoko hadn't considered, or maybe other immigration attorneys had told them was impossible. And I believe that was permanent residency. Is that correct?
Permanent residency. For permanent residency, you still had to overcome his conviction.
The conviction. Okay.
Yeah. But we were able to show higher in the court system that the issue of permanent residency, as we raised it there, that I had done a lot of research, and I found that every American state, the federal government, Mexico, all the other countries that I could research, required that a person who, for him to be convicted and for the conviction to be valid, the person had to have been had to have known that what he had in his possession was an illegal substance. In other words, in the law of England at the time, if you had a package and you were arrested and it had drugs in it, but you thought it was that you had aspirin in it, that's the only place in the world where you could have been convicted. Any other place in the world you would have been held to be completely innocent, because if it could be shown that you didn't know what was in there and you didn't know that it was an illegal substance, you couldn't be convicted. So that's the basis on which we eventually won permanent residence for John Lennon.
Yeah, because I believe there was some extenuating circumstances. The detective involved in the drug conviction, a well-known pop star hunter, Detective Pilcher, I believe was his name. He had busted several rock stars around the time. That John and Yoko had just started living recently in the flat where the event took place, and were on a macrobiotic diet that didn't allow them to even consume drugs at the time, right?
Right. He actually came with the drugs and the dogs to sniff them out. And he did that with so many other rock musicians. He subscribed to the theory that rock music was ruining British youth.
Well, it's a battle we're still fighting today. So, okay. So throughout 1972, you seem to be playing for time with Saul Marks, the district director of New York for the INS, and building a case against the government's action. Now, as we discussed there are a few legal options that you used, but most importantly, it seems the third preference application, I think I've got that right, was the primary way this sort of twisted. So can you explain that to our audience?
All right, to get residence for someone, you first have to get them placed on a waiting list that can be reached. And for outstanding artists, the waiting list was the shortest in what used to be known as the third preference category. And that was for outstanding persons in the arts or sciences. And it included any kind of an extraordinary person who had achieved special consideration in his life, in his profession. And both of them were in that category, both John and Yoko. It's harder for people to understand Yoko's professional skills, but they were in several areas, and she had reached very high levels of achievement.
Oh, yeah, she's a multimedia artist. I mean, it's her. The world is her canvas when you get right down to it.
Right. So what happened was we filed all the papers, and then I found out that nothing happened with it. And I checked into it, and they told me each time I called the district director, Saul Marks, my old friend, each time I called him, he told me that they're under consideration. But when I insisted on going to court to get them adjudicated, and they were taken from a safe in the district director's office, it was clear that he had no intention of adjudicating them. They were stapled together exactly the way I had submitted them and never were touched.
So you knew that this was above Saul, that this was coming directly from Washington at that point.
it was done in such a way, so it was so outrageous that they had no embarrassment for the steps that they were taking. They were not even trying to be reasonable.
So really, there wasn't like some sort of aha moment of, oh my God, the Nixon administration through John Mitchell is trying to subvert this case that I'm working on. It is just a constant building of water on the dam that then busts.
John Mitchell wore two hats. One was as the Attorney General of the United States, in charge of the Justice Department, the Immigration Service, and all the law enforcement in the country. And the other hat was that the head of CREEP, the Committee to Re-elect the President, President Nixon. And when he got word that Lennon was dangerous to the re-election of Nixon, he took all these actions. And of course, during the Watergate time, he ended up being in jail with a lot of the other people involved in the case.
Yeah. Now, excusing Nixon's well-known paranoia that's been proven time and again, there was an actual concern of the administration being concerned about the 1972 election, and that was the ability that 10 million new voters would be coming onto the rolls.
That's correct.
Yeah. So that was the, I forget the amendment, the
26th Amendment.
26th Amendment, yeah, that allowed 18-year-olds to vote, correct?
Actually, it became very serious because when you dropped the voting age from 21 to 18, you were taking in the people who for years had been immediately admitted to the Army and the armed forces of the United States and sent to Vietnam.
Yeah, a very unpopular Vietnam by 1972, yes. Yeah.
And nobody could express the unpopularity of Vietnam better than John Lennon.
Yeah, he had made a second career out of it starting about 1967, 68. So what was it like watching your clients discuss his immigration case on national TV like Mike Douglas or Dick Cavett?
Yeah, it was very exciting for me. When they were on the stage, I would often be off the stage there to answer questions or interrupt them.
Yeah, in fact, I think you did appear with John on the Dick Cavett show.
Yeah, we had a number of appearances. What's interesting, you'll find in the book itself, is a number of terrific pictures of John and Yoko as they lived through that terrible experience, and as we made appearances.
Just to cut in here, it's Michael Wildes, Leon's son. The book has great anecdotal notes that John used to write to my father when they were being followed by FBI agents. He would send little notes in.
Yeah, phone bugged and all kinds of things. Yeah,
all kinds of sorts of stuff. And in those days, it was before VCRs. And typically our father would come home and have little tape recorders set up. And we took the big clunky black and white TVs and would actually walk a tape recorder over to the television. We couldn't get the video of our father until maybe 30, 40 years later. But we heard the same scholarly voice. Dad and John drew a very strong personal relationship together through this case.
Yeah.
And he was a natural.
It comes across that way in the book.
Yeah, he was a natural when he sat with John, because he was the heavy on the law, and John was the personality and the witty one. And it came out in such a fashion that even to this date, we have such a close personal friendship. Yoko still sending people in to our office, and we've maintained that collegiality despite the passage of decades.
Yeah, yeah. So early in the case, it seemed, Leon, you were in a legal wrangling with two guys that you were quite familiar with, Saul Marks, the district director, and then the INS's lead prosecutor, Vincent Schiano. Was this normal business, and when did you know you were getting a runaround? And was it both of them? And I think Vincent's, which I think you call Vinny, is an interesting character, because it came across that maybe he wasn't 100% in on this.
Well, he was in on it, but I think he maintained his separate opinion on everything and stood apart from them when they met together. I was able to trust him more than the other officials there. I knew him for many, many years. He was the best attorney they had in the Immigration Service. Mm-hmm. And you'll see there were some interesting experiences we had.
You're very kind to your adversaries in the book.
Well, I respected them. You see, we tried to, one of the things that I pursued in the case, which we haven't spoken about yet, is my lawsuit under the Freedom of Information Act to try to get information as to whether or not the government had a system where they decided that some people simply shouldn't be removed from the United States, no matter how deportable they were, because of extreme and unusual hardship in their cases.
Yeah, and you are the first attorney to actually ask for that. Is that correct?
Yes, and we have been told by one district director after another that there was no such provision. But when I sued under the Freedom of Information Act, I found that there was such a provision.
Kind of basically prosecutorial discretion, right?
Yes, and a provision that was very strong. It said that in any case where the district director determines that adverse action would be unconscionable because of the existing of humanitarian factors, he shall recommend consideration for non-priority. And they had for over 100 years, the Immigration Service had denied that there was such a provision. When they delivered 18,400 cases, copies of papers in those cases to my office, there was jubilation here.
1,843.
Yeah. Just to get the exact number. Very good, Michael. So let's talk about the March 16th, 1972 deportation proceedings just for a moment. So in 72, you had two deportation proceedings, March 16th and May 21st. And I think this is where things really begin to take a turn. The first is Yoko comes with some information that's new. And I believe it's that she already had some sort of residency. Is that right?
Yeah. What upset me about it was the fact that I'm entitled to see all of their files under the Freedom of Information Act. And they never told me, and they knew that she had already become a permanent resident. They didn't have authority to place her under a deportation proceeding. Unfortunately, we couldn't prove that she continued to reside here each year after she got her residence based on her earlier marriage. So we proved we got her residence all over again based upon her third preference petition approval as an outstanding artist.
And that separated the cases. Now Yoko was pretty much guaranteed staying here looking for Kyoko, but you still had to deal with John Lennon, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then on that May 21st, what's really interesting, and I want to trot this out, because you brought the director of the New York MoMA in, Thomas Hoving, who later goes on to make an astute comment on John's career. And this is where there's a little bit of rock and roll archaeology for our listeners here. Do you remember that quote well enough to recite it?
No, I don't.
Do you mind if I do?
I would appreciate hearing it again.
There are few people in the last period of this decade in all of the arts, whether it's painting or sculpture or architecture or performing arts, who have contributed so much in an extremely deep and essential manner as Mr. Lennon. I take that as high praise, wouldn't you?
Without any question.
Yeah. And then you brought out some big guns here in the INS. I think Dick Cavett shows up, Alan Klein you brought on to the stand, and then statements from the Archbishop of the American Episcopal Church at the time, Paul Moore, Mayor of New York, Lindsay, and even an ex-British ambassador to the U.S., Lord Harlech, who elegantly fires some shots at the U.S. government. Yeah. So then you had to wait a year for any word, right?
Yes.
What was that like, and what were John and Yoko going through at that time? It must have been unnerving for them to just constantly be afraid that, the hammer's going to come down.
Yeah, it was very difficult on them, but they knew that no matter what would happen, I was here to hold back the tide, and I feel very grateful that I was able to be successful in their behalf, because it was a very, very important issue. And you know that this book is being published by an imprint of the
New York Bar Association, right?
No, the American Bar.
American Bar, excuse me. Yes, yeah.
But they feel it shows what one lawyer can do for one client. They found that a lot of people are not registering for law school anymore because they find it difficult. They don't think they can accomplish much. This was a case that showed what a lawyer can do.
Yeah, you worked very diligently over a 5-year period to beat the powers that be, all the way to the highest levels of government, which maybe you didn't know at the time, although maybe Yoko did, but you fought the good fight. So last couple of questions. I know we have a couple of press conferences. Saul Marks has one. You follow up on April Fool's Day with another. There's the Regional Director Group 8 memo. But finally, in the end, there's a 3-judge panel that rules in your favor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And that basically, now, you didn't feel that it was a complete victory, but by having this appeals court rule in your favor, that must have felt really good and feel that the tide was now turning for you.
Yes, and even after that decision, John got a call from one of the other Beatles who had this same kind of...
Oh, George, yeah.
George. And George said that the American consul in London told him that he did not have to apply for a waiver of his ineligibility under the Lennon doctrine. So John called me at the time and said, "Leon, I'm a doctrine."
Right. So let's talk a little bit about that, because that has come into play several times in 40 years, including fairly recently. So what is the Lennon doctrine, and how has that been used over the years?
We're very, very grateful that wherever it has been possible to use it, we were able to use it right here in this office. I can't tell you about the experience of all the other lawyers, but we have made good use of the efforts that we made in the Lennon case. And I feel very grateful to have been the person chosen to handle his case. I did a job that everybody seems to appreciate now, even though it's 40 years later. I'm just a slow writer, I guess.
Dad's actually practicing in the same building where John used to call in him. I'm 51 years old. We're paying rent in this building 51 years. We've expanded to Miami, to Los Angeles, to New Jersey. But in the end, it's a lawyer waiting to help foreigners. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the Imagine song, and you can say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one, this case opened up the door to President Obama's use of Dad's litigative tool in awarding a deferred status to children, but for the grace of their parents, were brought here by no other act.
Yeah, DACA, or what's called the Dreamers Act, right?
That's right.
Yeah, very, very, very significant. And I'm sure that's not your intention the night you walked in and met John and Yoko Lennon for the first time and came up with a beginning strategy on how to protect them and their interests here in the United States.
Well, I have since gained a great appreciation for the seriousness of the kind of music that you're more of an expert in than I am.
Well, thank you, but you know, the service you've done. So, Mr. Wildes, both Michael and Leon, thank you so much for joining us today on Deeper Digs in Rock. This was a real rock and roll archaeological dig for us, and we really, really do appreciate your time, you know, for what you did for John and Yoko, and by virtue, rock and roll, but most importantly, for your service to the people of the United States. You are a hero in the annals of rock, I assure you. So thank you very much.
Our pleasure. And people can learn more about this on our website if they're interested at wildeslaw.com. Okay.
All right. Michael, Leon, again, it's been a pleasure, and I wish you continued success, and we look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Thank you, Christian.
Bye.
Well, we certainly hope you enjoyed this discussion today with the late Leon Wildes and his son, Michael Wildes. Their perspective on this case, it's truly a piece of living history. They are extraordinary immigration specialists. Michael's still on the job. And it's easy to say John and Yoko were extremely lucky that day in 1971 when they retained the services of Wildes Weinberg P.C. This was some real rock and roll archaeology diggers. For a deeper dive into the landmark case, we highly recommend picking up a copy of Leon Wildes' book, John Lennon versus the U.S.A., the inside story of the most bitterly contested and influential deportation case in United States history, which was published by the American Bar Association and is available online or in bookstores. The Lennon doctrine, which emerged from this case, continues to be a significant precedent in immigration law, serving as a powerful example of how the legal system can be used to protect individual rights against government overreach. It's a story that underscores the profound impact that one artist, armed with a guitar and a message, can have on the world. Okay, so now, for those of you who hung around for the outro, first, thank you all for the support. Second, if you'd really like to help us produce more rock and roll archaeology content, consider a monthly subscription with Patreon. $1 gets you into the show, where we have ad-free versions and some specials for you every now and again. To find us, just go to rockandrollarchaeology.com. Hit the support button and you'll get to Patreon. Secondly, we revived this particular DDIR episode because, one, it is insanely timely in our world right now. Lennon's story is being found daily all over this country. Seriously, as you heard, a single person who happened to be the President of the United States, wanted John Lennon out because he feared the ex-Beatle would lead some uprising of the youth or something. Now, maybe he was just afraid of his words. Either way, it was utterly wrong. Wrong then and wrong now. Lennon was a documented immigrant looking to stay, and he certainly deserved the extraordinary ability status as an artist. So ask yourself, If John Lennon could face this backlash for just being, again, we know he wasn't about to start Revolution 9, or any other number for that matter, far from it. But that didn't stop the most powerful man in the world from attempting to deport him, just based on fear. Lennon had means, and obviously his fame helped as well, but most of us don't have the extraordinary ability. So I guess anyone the government doesn't like could find themselves in the same situation. Maybe not you, because you are a citizen, but definitely someone you know. Something to think about. All right, until next time, keep up the rockin', and we'll see you right here again for another installment of Rock and Roll Archaeology.
Rock and Roll Archaeology is hosted and produced by Christian Swain. Story by Christian Swain and Richard Evans. Written by Richard Evans. Sound design and incidental music by Jerry Danielson. If you want to reach us, rockandrollarchaeology.com has links to all of our socials. If you'd like an ad-free version, visit our Patreon page. Copyright 2025, all rights reserved. This presentation is education and commentary, consistent with the fair use provisions of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act.